don't know what the hell that means. Yeah. So hello, and this is actually the first episode of Joystix Canada in review. Dun, 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 dun. There's gonna be some music, maybe in like a few months when we've actually done this a few times. Hopefully, it will become a regular thing. I'm planning on having this kind of a thing where we talk about either video game movies or video game shows, or anything that kind of where video games have taken another life form in another medium, which is pretty much gonna just be, let's face it, it's gonna be TV or movies. This week I wanted to talk about the Netflix series called High Score, which I think everyone has seen. Maybe the entire thing, maybe the first 5 episodes. So yeah, this series actually came out mid-August this year, I believe. And it was actually a lot of fun. It was like it was 6 episodes, and I want to say they were about half an hour each. Some of them they did range, like some of them are about 45 minutes, but they were on average about 35 minutes or so each. And they kind of ranged across, I don't know, the entire, not the entire video game like realm, but like up until, I'd say, I don't know, what would you guys say? Kind of like up until maybe like the 90s, I guess, like the late 90s, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I think the latest game they really talked about was Street Fighter, right? So that would have been 92, 93, 94.
Yeah. Oh, and sorry, I've got Richard, Nick, John, and Santino chatting about this with us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi.
So like each episode kind of focused on maybe one or two kind of specific topics. Like the first episode was kind of like the one that got me, like, sold me immediately, because they were talking. I remember they were talking about E.T. And like the kind of the big boom of the video game industry, and then the complete fucking just
Bust
fall.
of it.
That ET story was fantastic.
Oh, that guy!
I really enjoyed the interview with the developer and everything he went through, like to
Howard
actually,
Warshaw. Yeah, Howard Warshaw. Yeah, he was like almost proud of himself. He's like, and I made ET. Like, oh, you fucker.
But at this point, that's the only thing you can be, is proud of what the hell that is.
It's received cult status now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I really liked was how they told the story up until that point of saying, yeah, here's the buildup of how the video game industry kind of evolved, right? We're talking about classic arcade style gaming that was like Space Invaders, and they went through that whole thing about the World Series of Space Invaders, and that can't remember the person that they introduced, but she was the world's
That's right.
champion
That's right.
of
Yeah.
Space Invaders.
That's right. I forgot about her.
And then they talked a bit about Pac-Man and how that evolved.
Oh, Miss Pac-Man! Like,
Yeah,
I got one sitting in the other room. You know, like,
One
beautiful,
of the best
love it.
games, man.
So they were like, it was like in Japan, yeah, they've got Pac-Man and how Pac-Man actually came to be, and then they were like, great, how do we make this different? And so the guys in North America, basically took Pac-Man and said, yeah, this is Miss Pac-Man. So I was seeing that story evolve and how it got to the space that it is was great, and then hearing them talk about, all right, well, the next way to transition this is to go to like a cartridge-based system like the Atari.
Oh yeah.
And that's when they talked about, all right, here's the games, a plethora of games, like, you know, adventure and all of that stuff that's like available on Atari. And then they talked about E.T. and the complete dump that it was and how much of it tanked.
Well, I can't remember exactly, but the guy was saying he had, I think, 6 weeks to code the entire game or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say it's ridiculous.
Right? He met
It
with
was
Spielberg,
insane.
and
it was insane.
it was like 2
Yeah,
weeks.
he was like a hot shot. He was like, I was a hot shot kid, so I said, yeah, why not? I'm like, Jesus, dude. Like,
Well, didn't he
looking
come
back,
off of
obviously
me?
looking back now, it's like, what the hell were you thinking? It's so funny, man. I know, and then I know Nolan Bushnell was in like quite a what? I don't want to say quite a few episodes. I know he was in the first one, and he did make appearances like throughout, because he is kind of, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of people that are like the grandfather or father of video games or whatever you want to call it, but I still think he was kind of like the first like true kind of like spearheaded, like, you know, he really wanted to push it forward, at least in North America, I'd say.
Yeah.
Like he was kind of the, I don't want to say grandfather or father or whatever. That's kind of, that means that he was the only person.
Granddaddy.
He was, yes, he was the granddaddy. He was the sugar daddy.
But what I really like,
I would say
the story that they talked about.
I would say he was more of a visionary more than anything else.
No, Nick, you're right. Yeah, he kind of complimented a bunch of other people, right? Like he was, but he was like, yeah, he's the contractor or whatever you want to call it behind the scenes, like directing everything. He's the, it's kind of a weird position to be in, but yeah, he was, without him though, like the modern video game market, I don't think would exist.
Well, I like the story that they told about Jerry Lustin, the guy who created the cartridge system for video games, and it was based on his technology that they actually exist. We've got these consoles today that are connected to video games. So without that, like technology, nothing. This probably wouldn't wouldn't know gaming what it is like today. That was an awesome little clip that they put in that first.
It would have probably just gone straight to digital.
Yeah, the internet was thriving back in the 70s. I did like the second episode. I think it focused on all the like just basically Nintendo showing up. It was like all Nintendo, right? And the hilarious
Nintendo Power, man.
Oh, Nintendo Power was the best.
And the call center. Yeah, you had this giant manual of like maps and hints, and you basically sat there. You were the hotline.
That was awesome.
I love the mullet the guy had to wear for it. That was great.
Oh man.
The game. What do they call them? The gameplay
counselor
or something. Gameplay
counselor.
Yeah,
gameplay counselor.
And they'd wear the jacket in public, and all the kids would be like, "Oh my god, he works at Nintendo." I'm like, I'm not gonna lie. In the friggin' 80s, I would have definitely been one of those nerds, like walking around with a gameplay counselor jacket, and like everyone like weeping and friggin' like bowing in front of me. Like, yeah, that's right, baby.
But it's not only just the 80s. It's like 80s in the U.S. though. 80s in the U.S. Like SoCal, like all of these little hot spots. I mean, Canada, whatever. But I mean, to live in that era, oh. Ridiculous.
But I know
the championship was pretty cool too.
Which?
The Nintendo World Championship that they showcased in that episode. Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
That was amazing. Like that's still probably to me the only like quote unquote esport that I give a crap about is like the Nintendo. The Nintendo. They did another one somewhat recently. I think it was like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I want to say they did like a Nintendo World Championship thing, and it was actually still pretty fun to watch. Because it's like it's not just like game. It's not just like, you know, Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter Championship for 3 days long. It's like no. It's like you have to be good at like these 4 different games or 3 different games. And it's very, very like tightly packed in. It's like. It's actually pretty fun to watch, but I would.
Well, it was interesting too because I mean, they talked about the necessity for collecting coins, right? Because each of the levels had a requirement. So, you know, they would collect coins and then they would purposefully die because it was faster to die and then go back and get those coins. That. I was just like, that's amazing.
Like, how did you? How did you know?
Some of the loops within Mario 3 that you can do, where you can get like. Tons and tons of coins just by going, all right, I'm going to hop down this tube, I can jump back, hit this P switch, collect all these coins, and then fly right back up and go down a tube again. Like, and then repeat.
Well, it reminds me of the wizard. It's the wizard. Come on.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. Well, so
somehow the kid knew the warp zone the first time he'd ever played the game. I'm like, of course he did.
It's like, of course he did.
Of course he knew where the whistles were.
It's not fictional at all. Well, I'm surprised that the Power Glove and the wizard, like all of those things didn't really make a huge appearance in that episode. That was the one thing that I was like, are they going to talk about all those different accessories that were there? Are they going to talk about
they could make an entire 6-episode series just about Nintendo, like easily. Just about the
You
fucking,
got,
just about the fucking NES.
Robbo the robot.
Yes, just about
Oh,
the
yeah,
NES.
like, think
They
of all
could
the
make
accessories.
An entire thing. They could make an entire series just about the NES, and I would eat it up.
Oh, happily.
That was really like I know like I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but like that was the only real complaint that I had with this whole series is it was kind of like just a sprinkle of each thing. It was like they didn't really go into super detail about anything. And but then again, I'm maybe one of the, like, I think all of us combined, like all of us together, we're all kind of massively into video games. So it's like, but and maybe like maybe their target market for this is just like people that are really interested in video games but aren't like super hardcore and like die hard into them. They know enough about it, but they just want to kind of know some of the background or whatever. But I don't know. I still think they barely scratched the surface with a lot of this stuff.
You get movies like King of Kong, right? That they talk about Billy Mitchell,
so good,
right? And they get really granular about a very small fragment about the video game industry.
But how
and
good was that fucking movie? Right?
Oh yeah, unquestionable. But I mean, like, you're talking about like 6 or 7 episodes that have to span multi-generational industries, and there's so much content out there. I mean, how do you pick and choose? You really are at the whim of like, what do you want to focus on? And I think that they really did a good job, episode to episode, really kind of catering to, really kind of bouncing around the genres of games and spending just enough time. I mean, can you think of like a director's cut of all of the unedited footage that they probably recorded?
Oh my god. I almost, like, it's one of those things. I almost hope they, I know Nick, like, this is kind of another little thing, but Nick was saying that the company that put this together, I guess went under, or was like kind of not fired, but like
I wasn't me.
Who was that?
I think it was Richard.
Was it
that
Richard?
That was Richard.
Like the company that put this series
Richard.
together is no more.
Yeah.
So like that's really unfortunate, because I was almost gonna say like I'd love Blu-ray or
a season 2.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Well, even just a Blu-ray or something to come out, even a digital release or what, like something that has like 3 or 4 hours of somewhat curated behind the scenes content where it's like, do you want to know more about this like ET stuff? Then here's another hour worth of footage. I'm like, fuck, you know what? I'd watch that. Or like something about the fucking, I don't know, like the Sega CD, like when that came out. Do you want to know some more about that? I'm like, yeah, I do actually. There you go. But like now that company that put this all together is gone, I'm like, oh, that's fucking fantastic. Now we're never gonna see any of that stuff.
So were they really bought out, or were they dissolved?
They were dissolved. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd be curious, because it means that license could be sitting around somewhere, and someone could scoop it up and they could.
I mean, honestly though, like it doesn't take much to make this kind of series, right? Their production value was fantastic, but it's not to say that you're never going to see this sort of thing again.
Yeah, I'm sure another production studio.
Yeah, absolutely, and but more likely. So I did back one of these same sort of things from Area 51. They were called, oh gosh, what was it? Video game documentary. They were very ambitious. This was on, what was the backing program back in the day?
Indiegogo?
Not Indiegogo, the one even before Indiegogo.
Well, not Kickstarter, but
Kickstarter. Thank you. Okay, good.
Sorry, I was like, that's the one. That's like the.
That is the one. Yes. Well, I say back in the day, but I mean, like this.
Oh, okay. Like they're still the biggest, I'd say.
Yeah. So these guys went and got that backed, and they've been
Nick,
filming,
very nice.
Recording.
sorry, Richard.
All good.
Nick's like just teasing. He's like, hey, look at this. What's in my background here on my picture?
He's got Shinobi bird in. You can't see that.
Is that the Miss Pac-Man?
Oh yeah, I see the Shinobi.
Yeah, it's hard to come in.
There it is.
Yeah, maybe upgrade your camera to more than 1 frame per second, Nick. That'd be good.
I can't.
There's not much I can do with my MacBook Pro. Like
I'm just messing with you. No, sorry. Go on, Richard. You were saying like the
Anyway, I'm just saying that there are other production companies out there that
Yeah.
have tried to do the same sort of thing with less success, but it's not going to be the last time. It's much more likely you're going to get the focused documentaries about a single particular topic rather than, this really cool anthology of stories that are kind of loosely tied together.
And like I think touching on that, like this might be like another review or whatever sometime in the future, but there's another. I don't know if you guys have ever read the book Console Wars.
No.
I've heard of it. I have not read it.
I've read it.
It's sitting on my shelf over here somewhere. They actually made a movie. They made like an actual flat out documentary like movie about it.
Yep.
Which was really good. Mike and I watched it somewhat recently. Like Tom Kalinski was kind of like the main guy in it. Like he was, for whoever doesn't know this, I guess, like he was the CEO of Sega, but he worked at Mattel. Like he was like basically the He-Man guy. Like he kind of created He-Man. And
he was the guy in High Score.
He was in High Score, but like a blip. He was in there for a blip.
Yeah.
He kind of
he talked about building Sonic.
That for sure. That was a really cool part. But like Console Wars was like they took it to the next level and beyond. It was like
cool.
It was like it was the console war between Sega and Nintendo. Like all of the 90s, like the entire night. It was fantastic. But
that's very cool.
Anyways, yeah.
But
so
around like the Genesis and SNES era.
The best part was like him admitting the whole blast processing. He was like, "Oh, it's total bullshit." Like Mike and I watching that, we were laughing our asses off. Like everyone knew it was bullshit, unless you were a 13-year-old kid watching. Like, "Oh fuck, blast processing. That's better." He's like, "No, it's total fucking bullshit." No one. It was so funny, man.
That's great.
But the one thing I did like was the John Kirby, the fact that the
lawyer.
Who was that? He was a lawyer for Nintendo or something in the States or in Japan.
In the
States, and they named the Kirby character after him.
Oh yeah,
which was really. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was neat.
They actually dedicated that episode for him. Episode 2 was dedicated to him.
Oh, that's right.
Cool.
That's right. Yeah. And then number 3, the third episode actually focused on like pretty much just on RPGs. And anyone who has ever seen Richard Garrett in videos before, dear Lord,
I had not.
Oh my God. So, Santino, do you remember this episode?
I'm starting to think I may have fallen asleep through a couple of these episodes and watched the 5th one.
He basically roleplays the whole time throughout this episode.
Yeah, Richard Garrett doesn't turn off. Basically, he created the Ultima series.
Oh, jeez.
Including Ultima Online, and he's also done some other stuff. But like the Ultima series is kind of his biggest thing.
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie. The Ultima games were really good back in the day.
Yeah.
And Ultima Online was the first like MMO that I ever really played, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But he's fucking wacky. He is wacky.
Okay, cool. I gotta rewatch because maybe I.
He's an individual. He's a very unique individual.
Oh, for sure. Well, he got his whole inspiration from Dungeons and Dragons, right? He wanted to take that and put it into like an online world where we can get people together and have different classes and different attributes and go on and be able to build these characters, right?
Yeah, totally cool. Go for it, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. But at the same time, like he hammed it up pretty good.
But that's just him. He doesn't act for the camera. It's like, yes, I'm Richard Garrett, and I have a 3-foot-long rat tail. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just watch.
It's his authentic self that he brings throughout the whole episode, and so it's like, all right, I understand. I can see how that creative genius built the game back then, right?
I almost can't be mad. I'm like, I wish I had his confidence.
Seriously. All right, I'll have to watch it when I'm awake.
So did they did talk a bit about like the LGBT community and how they created Gay Blade.
Oh, yeah, that
I
part was
remember
really neat.
I remember
Yeah.
that.
That part was really cool.
Blade?
They were
Really?
looking for the copy of the game, and then they had to update it. Did they
Yep.
update that they later found the copy of it?
Yeah, they
I don't recall.
said all of those copies were lost during a relocation. The game was later found with the help of the LGBTQ video game archive. There's actually
That's cool.
very specific organization. I'm like, oh my god,
Wow.
Jesus.
wow.
It's very,
Okay.
very niche. But I like the 4th episode where they brought in John Madden to talk about it, like
That was great.
bigger in NFL, because it was really based around the console war that we were talking about, right? The Nintendo and Sega are going back and forth against each other, and then Sega was like, right, how I like the list that they drew out, saying this is the 5-step approach for how we're gonna destroy Nintendo.
Oh, that was good. Yeah, that was
They
fantastic.
scratched it off, and they was giving examples for
Make
every
fun of
single thing.
Nintendo. Make fun of
Yeah.
Nintendo was the 5th step or something like that.
That
And that's
whole
where they-
promo piece, like I was totally thrown back to my youth when they had all of those commercials that they were showing where they were like, Sega. I'm like, yep,
Oh yeah.
I remember that. Holy crap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the John Madden football. It was all about the sports. It was all about the sports series, man. All about the sports
Santino.
games for the Genesis. What was that? What is that? Santino mumbling over
It
there.
just keeps going. I don't remember that at all.
Definitely slept through that. But like
So
when I
you
went
did
to my Netflix today,
Sant-
it started at like, okay, start episode 5. I'm like, oh, okay, sweet. I must have watched the rest of them. Like,
No,
okay.
go back and watch episode 4, my friend. You'll enjoy it.
okay.
It's worth it, man.
But
They're
I-
really good. They're really good.
And
Also-
2 and 3.
What I really also enjoyed about the episode 4 was the fact that they're targeting an older audience. Like they're saying, yeah, if we can get older brother hooked on
Yeah.
Sega, that younger brother is going to be like, all right, I want to play Sega too because my older brother's doing that, and they
Well,
wanted to do that with sports games, right?
I
Gotcha.
even remember that, like, not necessarily Genesis versus Nintendo or Sega versus Nintendo, but it was like PC versus consoles when I was growing up. Because my brother is I want to say 8 years older than me, 7 or 8 years older than me. I actually can't remember. But he's definitely older than me. And he was like big into PC. So when I was playing like Super Nintendo, he was always like, "Oh, what the hell is this? Nintendo crap. This, video game console crap." And it was like, "Oh, he's making fun." And it got to the point where like once it got to like the disc based platforms, I think for him, he was like, yeah, all right, fine. He just kind of conceded at that point. Now he plays his Xbox more than his PC, and he's like, I don't know, late 40s now. So it's really funny. But it was Sega versus Nintendo.
Hey, there's
it was
nothing
PC
wrong with
versus-
that.
Oh, I know. It's like nowadays, it's like I don't give a shit what you play. I'm like, this is all I do is I drink beer and I play video games. I have every system. That's all I do. So who cares?
Well, and it's funny too because I talk about a couple of guys at work and they're like, oh, Xbox this, whatever, and I'm like, like I've got all of things. Like my kids have got their systems upstairs, and I tell them it's like, listen, they're not even allowed in the basement, let alone anything. They're looking more forward to me fixing the Miss Pac-Man than they are about anything else. It's there's something to be said about this current generation's kids and how they perceive technology and the aspect of what's considered fun and modern now is so different from when we were kids because I mean, yeah, sure, everything's going digital, but I mean, like it seemed like every generation there was a format change in how the console was perceived. Like say 16-bit versus 8-bit versus 32, and now it's just kind of like it's about the hertz, right? I mean, it's like Intel and AMD talking about like their CPU speeds, right? It's the GPU wars almost now.
I almost think that like the reason that they push all these things is because they can't. It's almost as if they can't make games that are fun. It's like they have to like justify the technology behind everything because they can't just like have a fun game. Because like a fun game is a fun game. I don't care how the hell old it is. Like give me 1942 on like a 10-inch screen. I'm like, yeah, give me. I want to play it right now. I'm like, fuck, I don't give a shit. It's like, give me that Miss Pac-Man right now. I'm like dying to play it, looking at it on the screen. I'm like, oh man, I'd love to play that right now. I'm like, it doesn't matter that game is ancient, and like, I have an Xbox over there with like 200 games on it, and a PC with another 200 games. I'm like, but right this minute, I'd love to play Miss Pac-Man.
But this is where like the arcade one-ups. This is where the arcade one-ups have really spoken to our particular era of generation, because it's rebuilding the games that, for the most part, the average consumer can't do on their own, right? And you know, like I got a Raspberry Pi in mine and whatever, right? And the kids play that and they love playing fighting games. It's really amazing how competitive they've gotten. And so going back and looping this back down to, you know, the high score game and watching the Street Fighter episode, I mean, it really resonated with me. It was amazing.
Yup. It threw me back into the amount of hours that I would spend inside of an arcade playing Mortal Kombat or playing Street Fighter 2, lining up or like putting down my quarters and going, yeah, I'm next, or staying on for like, you know, 4, 5, 6 wins that you have. I think I even remember renting out the arcade and having that like a birthday there, and where I had like 10 friends that would come in and you get unlimited plays. And it's just I remember getting so pissed off finding my friend playing Virtual Fighter 2. It's so good though.
Yeah, I think like that was the 5th episode, right? Like they were kind of like talking about all the fighting games, like the obviously it was Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat were kind of like the big ones, and like and this is another area where I thought, like, you know, that's fine they're touching on it, but I'm like, they didn't even scratch the surface with this stuff. It's like there's a whole other world with fighting games. Like even to this day, it's kind of nuts. But it was still neat seeing seeing John Tobias.
Yep.
Like talking about Mortal Kombat, because like you don't really see him too much. It's usually what was the other guy's name again?
Ed
Boon.
Boon?
Ed Boon. Ed Boon's usually the guy that's like doing all the press junkets and all that kind of stuff. He's the guy that you see. Like John Tobias, you don't actually see all that often. So the fact that they were talking to him instead was kind of cool.
Yeah, it's neat.
I loved how they showed the digitization process.
Oh shit!
Through.
Sorry, but the Street Fighter was it? It was this series, right, where they were going through how they came up with the ideas for the levels for Street Fighter 2.
Yeah, I remember that. I was not asleep.
With the E-Honda, like the bathhouse, and they're like, oh, we can't just make E-Honda a sumo guy. We got to give him kabuki makeup and give him some fucking weird outfit. I'm like, this is so cool. This is awesome.
Yeah, like when they were,
I really like that.
They showed the next level of silliness or the next level of character that they have to add on for every layer. Right? That was pretty cool. Same thing with like Chun-Li when they talked about her being the first kind of real woman that was in a video game that was a strong character, right? Because she was like,
we have to make her kick ass. We have to make her kick ass. I'm like, go for it.
She's like an FBI agent that's going in and investigating whatever. That was pretty neat. But when they did
kick thighs.
Oh, ridiculous.
And then the digitization process for Mortal Kombat was pretty.
That's cool. Yeah,
that's awesome.
I like that they got it from Van Damme, Johnny Cage. I didn't.
Yeah, man.
At all.
I didn't know that either. No.
I mean, I got the reference, like it looked like what he would do in Bloodsport, but I didn't know that that's where they actually took it from. Like back then, I didn't make that.
Oh yeah,
all the motion
that was awesome.
And everything too was cool.
Yeah. That was really cool.
And I like all the different actors that they showed playing for each of the different characters when they did all that digitization.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm Sonya Blade. It's like, okay.
I'm Liu Kang. They all had their stupid taglines.
Yeah, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
So 90s.
Sit down. Yeah, it's so 90s.
So 90s.
So bad.
It's like a bad. Like,
this is awesome. It's like, no, it's
like
not.
a VHS speed dating service.
My God.
You
and they pause it and it's all wiggly on the screen. It's like, oh,
what was it? What was it? Mad TV, like the intentions or whatever.
lowered expectations.
The lowered expectations. That's what it looked like.
So
anyway.
I know okay, so yeah, the last episode was
no. Before that, so they used that same technology for the game that they were going to do called Night Trap.
Oh yeah,
and that was a flat out FMV game. That was dude. I owned Night Trap in like the original like terrible like cardboard case for Sega CD, where as soon as you open it, the case dissolves. Like those were the worst video game cases ever made. Were the original Sega CD cases. But yeah, Night Trap with Dana Plato and
yep.
It was a shitty game.
And so they explained why it was so crap, because there could be no reproducible violence as a part of their legislation or part of the reasons why they can't have this. So what they ended up doing, right, was like they ended up getting this like this grappling hook kind of thing, and there were these vampires that were coming, and in order for them, they can't bite you to suck the blood, but no, they're going to use this contraption to hook it around your neck, drill into it, and then suck it out and put it into this. Oh yeah, you can't reproduce that kind of violence. Like, it's like what?
And the vampires were like dudes dressed in garbage bags with like red ping pong balls on their eyes or something like that. It was insane.
Oh, man,
it was horrible.
It was so fucking bad.
That does sound terrible.
Also, so fucking amazing.
Oh, okay.
But it's interesting where they will take all of those different kinds of technology, right? Because without that, we wouldn't have seen it being applied in these like kind of full style games. Anyway,
the funny thing is, like FMV still sucks in games.
Yeah,
like it should never be used.
That's
like
true.
It's all mocap. Like, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, the last episode I still think was my favorite, which was like pretty much focused on like the shift from 2D to 3D, and it was mainly about like John Romero being his ridiculous self with his like black fingernails and ridiculous long hair and everything. He's so funny. Like he's such a cheesy dork, but like I can't hate him because he invented so many good things. I'm like, I want to hate you, but you made so many good fucking games.
Come on, it's software.
I think about this often because I think about what happens if, that individual never produced that technology. Like, we would eventually get there after a little while. Somebody would figure it out. But, would it have had the same impact to the industry that Doom would have had he not produced it? Like, where would we be now if that never happened, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't just John Romero that created the seamless scrolling in a 3D environment. There was also, and they talk about Giles and Dylan that created the first 3D mod for Game Boy, and then they started to Nintendo.
That was the Star Fox or the Super FX chip or whatever, right, for Super Nintendo.
Yes, the Super FX chip. So they
Star Fox like that. Yeah, they actually were more close than I thought. Like those whole stories, I was like, whoa, what the fuck? I had no idea they were even like related. That was pretty interesting.
What was neat was they thought they were going to get slapped from Nintendo going, don't do that, you're hacking our stuff.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
they're like, no, come, we want to exploit your technology and apply it, and then they created Star Fox out of that whole thing. And it was interesting the way that they tell the story around how it came, right? Like how they did the gates. So every year, the Japanese, they do homage to these shrines, or they make a homage to these shrines, and they do that by going through a lot of these gates, similar to what you do.
That was actually pretty cool, yeah. And like, that was like the justification for Star Fox being on rails was like, like in Japan, that's what it would be like, is going through these things. Like, what the hell? This is crazy. And like they give like the backstory for so many. And again, that was my problem with this whole series is like some of the things they get into such detail about, and then other things they're like, Oh yeah, and then the Mortal Kombat's over there and like Sega Genesis, whatever. And then they talk about the Super FX chip for 35 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck? This is weird, man. It's like, why are you jumping all around the place? And like, I don't know. I want them to talk about one thing for more than 5 minutes, and like.
So it's kind of like the same problem that Nick was talking about before. It's like it's multi-generational, and it's kind of hard to really clearly mark. Here's the milestones that changed our industry and changed all the games that we love and made this like this ecosystem something that we're really going to take part of. So I like it. I liked it for that. Where we're saying here's those mile markers, right? The 2D to 3D. That was pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this off air, but they went, kind of an inch deep and a mile long, right? They didn't dive into any one particular story, but that's okay because to your point, they did a really good job of interconnecting all of these seemingly disparate stories into this really cool narrative about here's kind of even just a vertical slice of video games and what it took to kind of get those games to be. So would I like to have seen more about some of these things? There probably is stuff out there that exists, right? Like books and maybe some other movies and TV shows. So they don't need to be the de facto thing. It would have been cool if they were, but I think what they produced was kind of probably what they were aiming for.
Well, and they spanned 20 years worth of technology. So that's the other thing is like, okay, there's a lot of ground to cover from like 70s to 80s, 80s to 90s. So it's like, all right, if you really want to dive deep, you're going to be going deep into each generation. Like every 10-year gap is at least miles forward with technology, right?
Well, and it's not even just in your gap. It's not even about the generational aspect. It's now about the brand, right? I mean, like you could spend hours just talking about Sony, right? Yeah. And the fact that, they spent a lot of time talking about Jack Kirby, right? I mean, and, Nintendo's lawsuit and everything else, and they named the character Kirby after him type of thing, right? I mean, like, it's cute things like that I was like, I knew kind of in the back of my head because I'd read it about at one point, right? But it was interesting. But also consider the fact that they went back and they found these guys. Like, think about the woman who is the champion for Space Invaders, right? Tracking them down, right? And broadcasting their notoriety, because really at that point in time, video games was that industry that everybody kind of was just like, you play video games, type of thing, right? And now it's like you think of the esport industry, and it's like it blows my mind. Like people make millions of dollars playing this shit, whereas back then, it's you think of hockey players then and now, right? Think of how much money Gretzky could have won or made had he been a recent player in today's day and age, right?
True, man.
I would like to recommend that we watch, and I know, or at least I think I know that none of you play Dota, but you play Dota?
I have.
I haven't done so recently.
No,
is it a documentary?
I don't live in China. So.
They're documentaries. There are at least 4 of them. But they do one every year as part of their big esports tournament called the International.
Yeah.
And they so what they do is they start the tournament is whatever 32 some odd teams, but it starts with tons of qualifiers. So they start recording all this footage, but in the end it becomes this true sight about how the winning team got through to actually win the championship. So they have to collect a ton of footage in order to get the winning team, right? They're phenomenal. They're super well produced. It really talks to the stage of esports or where esports are in the video game world.
I think I watched something like this already. So they had like a Russian and or was it a North American and a Japanese team?
That was a different one. So that was one of the ones that they released a little, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where they talked about some of their bigger players. And then this became the thing that they do now. So they did that one. It was like a player profile on 3 players.
Yeah.
But now this is about the team. So they'll still do it about the individual players on that team. But Anyway, just piggybacking off of that idea of the esports piece, they did allude to that in High Score, right? They showed some of the League of Legends tournaments and how they were packing the stadiums and stuff. But again, to our earlier point, they were just like, that's somebody else's gig. They're going to take over. Maybe we'll tackle that at a future date.
That's my thing with those games. Is like I'm not like a Dota or a LOL or whatever, like League of Legends or like Heroes of the Storm. I don't really play any of those games anymore.
Yes.
But, like I don't really play those games, but like I still do appreciate the fact that like they can fill a stadium with 100,000 people or whatever it is just to watch a game. I'm like, what the fuck?
And the stories are usually well told,
it's
right?
amazing.
Like, this is Valve we're talking about here with these documentaries, right? Like, consider the producer. They do a pretty good job of, yes, being self-promoting of the product, but also doing a really good job of getting behind the scenes on their the competitors. So
sure.
It's worth it. Even if you don't understand the sport, you don't need to. It's you'll kind of get swept up in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I've watched enough Evo stuff, and Evo is more fighting, and you get a lot of what is it, Super Smash and stuff like that for the competitive fighting games. And I always laugh about that because the announcers are half the personalities in a lot of these, right? Because I mean, the players are just kind of like,
they're so serious.
Oh yeah, they get right in there, right?
They get really into it.
But there's
which is kind of cool.
There's some
really in a way, it's. I don't know.
I mean, that's
for like
the personality.
Yeah. No, go on, Nick.
Go ahead.
No, go on, Nick. It's The personality is hilarious.
It's all about the personalities and the chemistry that these people bring to it, right? Because I mean, like the fighters. I mean, it's much like every other esport. I mean, like you're watching a screen and there are players and they're communicating type of thing, but it's really the announcers that really bring the color commentary to it. And without them, you strip that audio out of it, then you really lose that aspect, that draw to it, right? You're really just watching somebody play a game.
Yeah. Well, it's like all of the esports casters for Star Wars, not Star Wars, for StarCraft. Excuse me. So, a lot of the casters that have done that for StarCraft bring all of that personality. They also give you like the background from each of the different players that are part of that. They talk about the different moves that are going to be part of that, the units, how they change and how they interact and how they change the landscape, and what strategies involved and what the cost is. All that. So without that, like you're saying, without that color commentary and without that knowledge of the game, it really is just watching someone play. But you also get the nuance of like, this is the kind of discipline and thought and focus that's required in order to play at like a professional level.
True.
Oh, next mute. I think he was saying something.
Oh.
Sorry.
No. My cat's entered the room and he's sniffing.
My cat has entered the room. Dum.
I think we've got a lot of content to cover for future ones of these.
Oh yeah, for sure. That. So yeah, like overall, definitely. I don't know. In my opinion, definitely watch this series. It's not super long. 6 episodes is not a big time sink. If you have like literally any interest in video games at all, it's definitely worth watching. It's a lot of fun. My only real complaint, which I don't know. No, it's a legitimate complaint. I don't care. It's just I wish they went into more detail about each thing. Like it could have been like 12 episodes or more, or multi-season. I have no idea. I don't really know what I was looking for. I just want more of what they were talking about, because it just felt like they were scratching the surface a lot of the time. But it was, like Richard was saying earlier, the production value was really good. Everything was really well put together.
But here's the thing, right? Even if this production company did get bought out and they've been scrapped, it doesn't stop anybody else. And again, he mentioned it too. The reality is this data is out there. And much like the 4 of us, 5 of us, there are people like that want this content, that want to see more. So really all this does is it it enables people to go hunt for that information and to self-produce content, right? Will it ever be the same production level that this had on Netflix? Probably not, or maybe it will. I mean, you just don't know. Can an individual kind of scrap together this kind of stuff? Probably not worth it, but you know, if you get 2 or 3 people that are really passionate about this kind of stuff, you know, I don't think it's unheard of. It just may not be as mainstream as Netflix.
Yeah, and I'd be fine with that. I'd be like, I need to pay $20 to watch another 6 hours of like extra footage from all this stuff. I'm like, you know what? I'd actually probably watch that. I'd be pretty interested to see like a lot of this behind the scenes stuff. Cause like this is like a huge part of my life, like growing up as well. So it's like, I think I'd totally be into that.
Scores really high on the nostalgia factor, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh, it doesn't hurt that I was literally building the Lego NES while I was watching this series.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
How does that work? How well does that play?
You'll have to come over and see, Nick.
Okay.
You'll have to burst your COVID bubble and come over and have a look.
Oh,
yeah. So
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Roundtable consensus on yes, you'd recommend this for someone else to watch.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's.
I think
I personally, I just wish it was more in depth, but there's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it whatsoever. It was a lot of fun to watch. I had a great time watching it, but if you're looking for anything serious or like really detailed, then look elsewhere. But yeah, it was good.
I think for people like us and listening to this podcast, yes. For people who maybe don't have their video game nostalgia rooted in the 80s and 90s, probably not.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
I mean, I'd love to, one day show my kids this and just be like, look at this stuff and they'll just be like,
Dad,
I don't care.
Suck.
Nobody cares. Yeah.
They're like, we don't
That's
need
not
a
cool.
history lesson. Get out of here.
Yeah. I think
mid 90s.
you need the reference points to be able to appreciate some of the content.
Agreed.
So again, for who we're talking to or who we talk with, it's definitely worth the watch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it as well.
I would agree. I think that reference point is really important, right? I mean, I think that's what grounds the importance factor in the nostalgia is that we have kind of an anchor to that generation that we were there, we grew through it, right? I mean, like I'm part of that Xennial kind of, you're born in an analog kind of environment and then you're kind of moved into that digital kind of atmosphere. And, while there's a massive amount of people that went into like places like Funland in Toronto, to experience that kind of an atmosphere, or any arcade, really. I mean, even Wonderland had an arcade. Every local mall back in the Palladium. Hey, November 1st, it's closing down. I've already gone online looking for auctions to see if I can purchase anything because I need to buy more.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
November 1st.
That's a whole other conversation.
They have a website that they used to use to sell those refurbished systems.
All right,
I used to go to them very often.
Mario Kart, like the
Mario.
Mario.
That's actually how I got it.
Sega Rally 2, the actual drive cab. Oh my god, that arcade machine was like way.
Why does nobody want the Daytona 500? That gigantic setup that was archaic. Like it was.
Oh no,
terrible.
that was Indy 5. That was Indy 500. That was Indy 500.
Indy 500. Yeah.
That took up half the plate.
Radmobile.
Mark Nascimento has that at his store.
I know. I've seen it.
You haven't?
I've actually played it. It was so good. It's so good.
Anyways,
why isn't he on these podcasts?
He wants to be. He couldn't make it tonight. So anyways, we have a friend who owns a retro game store in Hamilton, Ontario. He is very outgoing, he's very vocal, and I think he does want to be on these, but he may have just he definitely couldn't make it tonight, so that's why he wasn't here. But we'll hopefully have him on going forward. But yeah,
don't forget the amazing arcade collection that he has downstairs in his basement, which is ridiculous.
Absolutely.
No, you know what? He's got it all in storage. I had a conversation with him the other day.
He moved location.
Yeah.
COVID's awesome. It's great. It's a lot of fun.
Thinks he do wonderful things.
Wrecks everything. Ruins everything.
But yeah, hopefully we'll be on. This show will be. It's not going to be probably a weekly thing, but it'll be whenever we can do it. So yeah, we'll hopefully see you again soon. Ciao. Laters.